Hi there, Mark with 3 Basic Survival. Have you ever had trouble starting a campfire? Well, pretty much everybody has. A lot of times you don't have the right tools, or you don't have a good enough fire starter, or not enough fire starter. Well, today I'm going to show you how to start a fire with just a bundle of purchased firewood, a pocket knife, and a lighter. I'm going to show you how to make a few simple bushcraft tools out of the wood itself to help you get the fire ready. And I'm going to show you a fire lay that's unique. I've never seen it anywhere before, and explain to you the principles of how and why it works. Once you learn this, you just may never have trouble starting a fire again. All right, so let's get started prepping the wood for the fire. One of the things I like to do is lay down a jacket, or maybe you could do a shemagh or a handkerchief or something like that to put your tools on, and later on we're going to use it also for catching the shavings. So I've got my pocket knife here, got my lighter here, got the bundle of firewood. Let's see what we got in this bundle. Now, one thing you might want to do when you're purchasing the bundle of firewood is pay attention to what size and shapes the woods are. It doesn't have to be very precise, but I am looking for 5 pieces of decent sized wood. This one is a little less than ideal, but we'll make it work. So let's see what we have. I've got 2 larger pieces. These are going to be the base for my fire. I'm going to put those aside for the minute. And the first tool that I'm looking for might be ready-made in this bundle. I might not have to do anything with it. And that's what's called a baton, basically a hammer. And I'm going to use it to splinter off pieces of wood from the other logs. Okay, so I had a piece of wood that was already starting to splinter, and I went ahead and broke it apart by hand. This is a piece that could turn into a wedge. I need wedges to help split the larger pieces of log, but also if my knife gets stuck, I need to have something to be able to wedge in there to free the knife up. So that's important that I do that kind of first thing. So I'm going to take this piece and whittle it down a little bit. I just want to take mainly the loose splinters off so that they don't interfere as it drives in. I also want to make the end of it a little bit smaller. It needs to be thin enough that it can go where my knife is, like next to my knife, so that if the knife gets stuck, I can fit the wedge in there. Obviously, if my knife gets stuck, I can't whittle down anymore because I've only got the one knife in theory. So I actually have more than one knife, but for the purpose of this, one knife. Okay, that's good enough for that one. I want a couple because they do tend to break. I can use that as firewood later, so it's not really a waste. So this one is thinner, it's longer, but sometimes longer and thinner can be a benefit. So I'm going to go ahead and make this one smaller. Now, I don't like them to be too long, and I also don't want them to get really thin at the end. So I'm going to break off kind of the end so that it's not so long, and the taper is so extended. And that broke off really nicely for a rough shape there. Okay, let's finish this up. Take off the loose pieces. I can just break off some of that. And I'm going to even narrow it a little bit on the sides. Take off some of this loose stuff off the sides. That's actually pretty good right there. All right, so there's that wedge. So sometimes you have tough, challenging pieces like that last piece that I just splintered, and sometimes it just works out perfectly. I was popping this off, and it came off in almost a perfect wedge shape, just automatically on its own. It's like, that doesn't even need trimmed, really. That's a gnarly, wicked wedge there, we'll say. All right, so I've started splitting this log. I made the split smaller so I could get my knife into it more, but I basically just started the split with my knife, and then I drove the wedges in, and the knife freed up, and I'm now working it down with the wedges, just with the wedges. So let's keep pounding on this and splitting this part. I'm going to let's pound this one in. And I can kind of walk them down too. So that one's loose. I'm going to try to walk it down a little bit. So there's kind of a goofy piece here. This end is a little too thin to put on the bottom to hammer down onto, and this and is warped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and drive the tip of the knife down back from that warped part to start the split, put my knife into it. But then I have this wedge that's like a triangular shaped wedge, okay, with a very sharp tip on the end. And what I should be able to do is get that in there next to that tip of the blade and rotate it. Since it's a triangular shape, it might work. That's breaking down. Let me get another wedge in there. But if it's a yeah, there we go. See? And then I can rotate that wedge, and you can also just slide it down once you get it in. You can slide it down and pop that open. There we go. Worked. Okay, so in addition to the kindling that I'm getting ready and what will become some tinder, I need some fine tinder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my coat out. I've driven my knife into the top of the log. I'm splitting this corner off. But while it's there, I'm going to take advantage of this, and I'm going to position this like this to hold it in place. Now, you don't want to use a knife between what's called the death triangle, between your knees and your groin area. You have arteries that run up and down the inside of your legs, and if you nick them, you're in trouble. But I'm not moving the knife. I'm only going to be moving the wood that I'm working with, and it's facing away from me. So I think this is going to be safe. What I need to do is try to get some fine shavings off of this. This is a wedge. It was that wedge that I got when I was splitting a log. Some of these shapes just kind of happen naturally on their own. But while I'm shaping it a little bit better, I might as well save the shavings for real fine tinder. And just as a note, it usually is safer. I mean, it inherently is safer, is maybe a better way to say it, to move the material that you're carving rather than your sharp tool. It's actually more accurate and more effective and faster typically too. So now one other thing to think of is you do have the potential of getting splinters when you're ripping the wood and pulling it like this. So just kind of be aware of that. If you have gloves, you might want to use them, but we're just going to move ahead here. And I want to go back and forth. I want to kind of catch edges. I don't really want to be scraping the flat surface. It's harder to get curls from it, so I'm kind of rotating it back and forth as I go. A lot of these techniques, there's little fine touches to it that you can only develop through practice. I think of drywalling when I think of developing skills. It's one thing explaining how to mud drywall, and it's another thing doing it. And I'm no good at it, quite frankly, but I know that I'm not good at it. So get out in the woods and practice these skills so you know what you can do and what you can't, what you're good at. Fine-tune your skills. You know, there's another piece of wood that I wouldn't mind taking the corners off, and that's my baton. It's a little bit hard to grip, and I need these shavings anyway, so let's go ahead and do that some with this. This seems to be a softer piece of wood, so the shavings are coming off seem to be easier also. Okay, so we now have the components to our fire. We have the 5 logs. I have my baseboard. I don't always use that, but it's a good thing to have if you can. I've got my small bundle of wood curls here that I'm going to use as my fine tinder. I've got my longer pieces of tinder, and I've split these down until they were too flimsy at the bottom to be able to hammer down on or to split. I've got smaller pieces that are shorter that broke off early, and then I've got some chunks here. Those will have somewhat different uses as we get this set up. First thing I want to check before I get started is wind direction, because I'm going to set this up so that the wind, as long as it's not too strong, helps encourage pushing the fire into the heart of the fire. Let me check this. I'm going to use my lighter to check that wind direction. It's a very light breeze, okay, but it's blowing right in that direction. All right, so let's get this set up. I'm going to start with my two biggest logs, and I'm going to put them in a V shape. It has rained recently. I'm going to sacrifice a little part of my yard here. It's a better video setup where I'm at here. So there's no safety issue in terms of where the fire is at. I'm just going to burn up a little bit of grass. So I'm going to set this up in a V shape. I'd say approximately 45-degree angle. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to put my baseboard in there. And the reason I want the baseboard in there is to help keep the tinder off of the ground in case there is moisture there. As I said, it rained recently. It's not wet, but it's damp. And moisture kills one of the three ingredients of fire. You need heat, you need oxygen, and you need fuel. So when moisture evaporates, it reduces the temperature of the area to 212. And we don't want that because we need to be higher than that to get a fire. So moisture kills heat, which kills fire. All right, we have our baseboard in place. I'm going to put some of these longer pieces in there, the fatter, longer pieces. And let me just kind of look through here, pick out a few of the bigger, fatter ones. That's a fatter one. And I'm going to put this apart a little bit more, and I'm going to put these so that they're up against the face of these logs. And the reason I want to do that is I want to give a little bit of kindling up against these faces to help encourage them to light. What I'm trying to do is concentrate the heat and the fuel and the oxygen into a central point, into a small central point in this fire lay. Okay, I'm going to do about 3 or 4 pieces on each side. That should be good enough there. Let's just do that. Okay. All right. Then I'm going to take and I'm going to put the next biggest log on the back side of this V, on the bottom of the V. And I want it kind of sort of as close as I can to the back without falling off. I want to put a vertical face here towards me at the top of the V so that when I put this other log on here, they hopefully will have as much vertical face facing each other as possible is what I would like to have. So I may not get that exactly the way I want it. We're going to go like, I think we'll go like this. Now what I have, if you look down in the middle, and I'm going to show you this in a second, is you have an area that's about the size of my fist that'll be the heart of the fire. I'm going to put the tinder directly below that, and then I'm going to put some sticks in here vertically above the tinder so that the airflow will go straight up, and I'm going to fill sticks in between here to help get these faces burning off of each other. So you'll see what I'm doing here in a minute. Let me move this log out of the way, and I'm going to put my tinder in. I'm going to put that right at the bottom of the V. All right. Get that all in there. Put this log back on. And now I'm going to take and I'm going to put my big sticks. Actually, I'm going to use my thin sticks. Use my thin sticks, and I want the thinnest of my thin sticks in here, and I want the thinnest parts that are in there, I want them going to the bottom. I want, if it has a thick end and a thin end, like this has a thick end and a thin end, I want my thin end going down. So I'm going to make a bundle out of these. The thin end's going down. About as big as I can grab, maybe a little bigger than that, depending on the hole, size of the hole. And I want to put these in there vertically, directly over those wood curls. The idea is if I put them in there vertically, it will help the airflow go straight up and it won't restrict it. So now that I have those in there, I can go ahead. I'm going to continue adding on the sides, hopefully without knocking it over. I might have a little bit of an issue with that. We're just going to keep adding those vertically. Kind of a sloppy job here, but I'm not as concerned. I mean, I mainly want the thin pieces down over the tender curls so that they can catch more easily. That center part of this, it's going to catch in the center. If this works the way that it usually does and is supposed to, the center will start burning first, and there'll be a stream of smoke coming out of the center in the top to start with. Okay, so now that I have that in there, I'm just going to fill this up with some other kindling. Okay, I'm just going to put some on the sides. I actually would like to, I want to lean some in there. You know what? I need to break it up. I want to break these in half some because I want to fill the sides in where there isn't. The idea is to fill it up kind of on these sides. It can be a little bit sloppy once you get to this point. And the fire then will spread from the middle outward. Okay. All right. I'm going to break some more. I want to fill in. There's some gaps in the sides there. I'm going to only use about half of this. I'm going to put just a little bit more. Just a little bit more down in here. Kind of on the sides of those faces. I think that was a little lightly done. All right, and I'm saving this last small log. I'll show you what I'm going to do with it soon. It's going to go on top. Okay, so again, I have this fire chamber in here. I'm going to light these thin curls, and then I have the smaller ends of the thin kindling or the larger tinder in here above those curls. The air should flow vertically up through those that are standing upright and give it good oxygen flow. The prevailing wind is at the wide part of this V. I've got my baseboard keeping some of the moisture off of that and helping to reflect the heat back up, and also as a fuel so that there'll be a core of heat in the middle of this fire. So let me kind of go around it. I've got the sides filled in more or less, and the idea is that the fire then will build up in the middle. And what I'll do is I'll place that fifth log that I have over the top once this kindling burns in the middle. So once the kindling burns down, I want to be able to put this last large log on, but I want good airflow around that too. And I also want heat containment. So I'm going to put a stick on each side here. Could be a shorter one. I'll put this over the top. And when those pieces burn down, that'll drop in there. So I haven't done anything to the fire since I lit it. This is the way it all kind of settled in. When you have the logs laying parallel there on top of the others, it creates a beautiful fire for cooking or just for looking at. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it really useful. I hope you learned something about just fire starting principles and a new way to light campfires. Bring better tools next time. I wish I'd have had a fixed blade knife. I wish I'd have had an axe and some good fire starter, but hey, this worked with a little bit of effort. So get out in the woods, do it in real life, practice your skills. See you next time. Have a good one.